All right, we'll get started now. What's up, everyone? Welcome to a weekend special edition of Crypto World Radio. Thank you guys for joining today. And today we're here joined by our friend Phil Payne and also today's special guest Deebs, who works over at Orbital Command and is a Cosmos and Terra enthusiast just like myself. Today we're just going to talk shop, talk everything Cosmos, and if any of you guys here in the audience feel like coming up, feel free to do so. Just click that request button and it'll bring you right up. It's going to be more of a community space just like we had on Friday. And I always like doing those and just talking shop. So I want to welcome you, Deebs. Thank you for taking the time out of your weekend on this beautiful Sunday and coming over here to talk some shop, man. How are you doing today, my man? What's going on, brother?
I'm great. I'm great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation. Yeah, just glad to be here.
Well, no problem, man. Well, I'll give you a little rundown about myself, just so we can have something on the ground, so we can kind of bond over this. But yeah, I've been in the industry for about a little over 5 years now, and Cosmos was really the first ecosystem that I dived deep into, and it was actually like within the first 3 months that I was in the Web3 space. Got into the Cosmos Telegram when it was barely a couple hundred people in there, and Django Unchained was one of the only members from from the community at that time, and Jay would pop in here and there. But I was really fascinated with what they want to do with interoperability, especially during that time in 2017, 2018, where interoperability was one of the main vocal points. You had Icon, Wanchain, Aeon. They all wanted to be this like interoperability protocol, and then you had Neo with their smart economy, and really all they did was built on Ethereum, but they didn't think of you know trying to make their own sovereign chain. And when they did, sometimes they faulted by not making an efficient bridge. And Atom came out the bat. Well, not Atom the token, but the Cosmos ecosystem came out the bat. And with their Stargate upgrade in 2021, that bridge was absolutely seamless. I remember bridging to Terra, Harmony, all that stuff. And I got into Terra specifically right around that Binance and Galaxy Digital announcement, right around like late Q3 2020, as DeFi summer was cooling down, and did some research on Doe, and I saw him in his presentation on CNBC, trying to laying the groundwork for Terra and how UST would kind of be decentralized money for an economy, right? And how the Luna token would be the main beneficiary of that, right? And UST was going to be like the base pair for all of DeFi. And then it wasn't until Mirror Protocol got released, right? And for those of you that don't know, it's basically like purchasing synthetic assets. So similar to Synthetics Network, but when Mirror Protocol came out the gate, like it far exceeded what Synthetics was doing as far as unique wallets and volume and all that sort of stuff. And I found that really cool. And then like when I received that airdrop, I'm like, wow. So just by staking the token, I'm able to get all these airdrops, right? And, I remember a few months before that, I had gotten that Uniswap airdrop. So I was like, just by staking this one token, I get all these varieties of airdrops. So that's when I was really hooked and pretty much went like mostly all in on Terra for the next year plus, and fell in love with the user interface across the dexes and the NFT platforms like Nowhere and all that stuff, Random Earth. Participated in the Galactic Punks mint. Love that. I love that community. It was a really good experience. And of course, using things like Anchor, using things like Apollo, a really great experience. And then of course Astroport. If you guys have ever used Terra, you'll know that the experience of it, as far as transactions and sleek UI, wallet UI, it was catered towards the end user and not necessarily towards like these big brainiac devs. And you'll know what I'm talking about if you participated in that initial run in ETH DeFi in 2020. If any of you guys used Maker or Curve, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, or any of these food farms, or even the early version of YFI. Shout out to DeFi God for that one. And yeah, Terra was at the forefront of innovation, and of course, outside of Terra, you had things like osmosis, clean decks, nice tabs, good visuals, and that's one thing that is often overlooked is the visual aesthetic effect. And it might not seem much to us, but if we want to onboard those next couple million users onto our chain from the web 2 space, I think that's one thing that should be focused on, and that's where Cosmos really comes in, and they also have Juno, which is like an L1 built on Cosmos tech. And outside of the aesthetically pleasing stuff and all that and the nice transaction speeds, there's also the community. You have a lot of activity here on Twitter Spaces and even on YouTube. You have people like Cosmos Joe, or he's known as Cosmos DeFi here on Twitter. He actually, Bruce told me this. Like, it was one weekend where he just wanted to build his own chain, and the community just rallied behind him, and they all changed their PFP to this guy's face. And he's one of the more active YouTubers when it pertains to the Cosmos space. And I am in talk with him to try to get him on the show and trying to bring that value, trying to give back to the Cosmos space. So, yeah, man, that's a little introduction about myself. And yeah, brother. So we'll start off by saying, how did you come aboard onto Web3, and more specifically, how did you come across the Cosmos?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's great. I didn't know all about your background inside Cosmos, but definitely extensive. So you've been around a while, so you'll know a lot of what I'm talking about already. But pretty traditional entry into Web3, I would say. Right. I started with the kind of like, and I've moved away from like centralized exchanges given the events of the last couple months for sure. But um, getting to Coinbase and then to acquire Bitcoin, right? My roommate and I, it was back in like 2019 or so. We're just like, oh, here's this cool thing, Bitcoin, and we read a little bit about it. We're like, oh, it'd be fun to buy some. So that's what we did. We bought some, and I held on to it. He sold it early. I never sold any of mine, still have it. And outside of that, really, it was actually my family that kind of introduced me. I had a brother who's pretty interested in DeFi, and he introduced me to the Cosmos. I had a pretty similar story where I was definitely enamored with the vision of Terra, right? And I spent a lot of time and had a lot of experience with the UI and the UX, and just how seamless of an onboarding experience it was. And so, obviously the events didn't turn out the way I think most Terra users wanted them to. Um, the crash, right? Everything that happened. But I would say my formal entry into the business side of Web3 really was at the crash. And so I had been a long time kind of like DeFi user inside Cosmos and Terra. But when I saw the crash happen, I saw a lot of influencers, prominent people in the space just kind of exit Terra, right? And understandably so, people were devastated. But I said, hey, this is a good opportunity for me to continue to share what I'm passionate about. I'm going to follow the growth on the new chain that Terra is launching. And so I started doing a newsletter. And I did that for Terra and Cosmos, and kind of met a lot of people, really liked what I was doing, kept writing, got picked up by the validator Orbital Command, which I currently work for and do a lot of stuff on Osmosis as well. And yeah, just haven't looked back since. So that's my that's kind of my story there, just wrapped up in a quick pitch.
Sweet, man. So I guess we can get started, and we can talk some Terra V2 stuff. I mean, I've already spoken about what's going on with Feather and Alliance and all that stuff, but man, I really love the thread that you put out with all the projects that are being built on V2. Um, can you tell us anything about anything that you're excited for? Me personally, I love what Dexter Money is trying to do, trying to get them on the show as well, but I'll save that for another time. I just want to know, like, give us some of a breakdown of some things that you think are going to be vital as far as project integrations are concerned.
Sure, sure. I know you already mentioned Feather and Alliance. Quick question though, did you talk at all about like Game of Alliance? Do you know what I'm talking about? That's being released pretty soon. Because if not, I can touch on that real quick.
Yeah, that I don't know. Anything relating to game, like I can only
Sure.
refer back to GameFi, which is what I believe what Terra V1 was trying to do more towards the end. They wanted to implement some GameFi and NFT stuff more broadly.
Yeah, yeah. So, and honestly, a lot of the GameFi, I think, because on the spot. Like there was even stuff on testnet a while ago for like a Pokemon based game that people uncovered that they were building on testnet. To my understanding from people I've talked at TFL, a lot of that stuff is on the back burner right now because of market conditions. But Game of Alliances has everything to do with Feather and Alliance, which you just kind of referenced earlier. This is dropping within the next like week and a half to 2 weeks, per Jared of TFL. He actually got on a what was it, a video? It was like a YouTube video live with Bytes Digital Group. If you've seen those guys, Pantera and Joseph Casa Intern, and he brought up some like screenshots. I referenced it in the thread last week, but basically the point is, it's to rehash Alliance a little bit here, right? Alliance is the ability to basically economically align LSD staking rewards, so that like an LSD of one chain can be staked on another. And there's a host of different reasons why you might do this, right? You may have a larger chain that's helping secure a smaller chain, but there's a variety of different reasons that you might want to do this. But basically, they're opening this up to users, which is kind of cool. They're going to let you from the station wallet, I believe. They showed some screenshots. They'll like basically show you like, okay, here are all the chains in the alliance. It's on testnet, we're going to give you this amount of like assets, and the goal is to LSD stake these on all these different foreign networks through alliances, alliances with Terra on testnet, right? It's all kind of notional for now. And at the end, they're going to have some, I don't know if they'll actually have a reward, but the goal is to basically, be the best at alliances, like by maximizing the yield of your assets, by um, messing around with different chains. So, I guess the cool thing there is it'll be our first like use of the actual interface for Alliance that will come as these chains form alliances with Terra. But I'll pause there, and if you have any questions, we can talk about that some more. And then, but there's definitely a lot of other stuff going on as well.
Yeah, I could kind of give you like my breakdown of what's going on um, Alliance and Feather. So essentially, like the pitch is that you're able to launch your own chain at no cost, or really any dev team secured by Luna, and you're basically able to create a DAO or NFT or token with again no background, no cost or dev team using I know Enterprise DAO, and you're basically able to automate that with no tech background using this thing called Warp Protocol, and it's essentially like a new Cosmos module. It's going to allow, as you said, LSDs, and in that effect, it's going to allow new chains to form, as you said, more alliances with bigger chains, making the native asset, which I'm assuming would be Luna. I think that would be like the main beneficiary of that. And that would make like the yields more stable coming in from like the bigger assets within Terra, and providing the asset that's held more broadly, which again would be Luna, and basically the main beneficiary of that would be the Luna stakers. And then again, with like touching on Feather, that's going to allow that new chain to deploy more even more simply with CLI, and then of course validators like yourself can then listen onto those new chains and spin up validators and and from what I've been gathering, they're trying to
We're
go
starting
for
to
like.
lose you. I don't mean
Yeah,
to
you're
cut you
rugging a
out.
little bit, Lobby.
Can you guys hear me? Can you
Yeah,
guys
you're
hear me?
good.
Now it's good. Yeah,
Okay,
now it's
okay, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure how much I cut off, but like the
not
TLDR
much.
is essentially that they're pivoting more towards a modular chain approach, and they essentially want to create that demand for the Luna token. So it kind of goes back to Doe's points, where it's sort of like a rebrand where It went from decentralized money needs a decentralized economy, but it's sort of now it's sort of like it's a centralized economy needs money, something like that. And so the narrative is essentially that the Luna token will be the most sought after token as far as comparing it to other L1s. And given the framework that's being laid out there, and I'm sure the amount of capital that's being put into the right of this ecosystem, there's something to be said about that. And I'm aware that, like, in May and June and July, like everything at TFL kind of stopped to a halt. But all of a sudden they're hiring. They have this entire rebrand. They have all these protocols being built out on them. So to me, it says that there's someone in the background that's placing a bet on them. And if we kind of spin up this redemption arc, right, this rebirth, this rising from the phoenix sort of story, I think people can rally behind that, man. And I honestly think it can happen. um, I've always been more of an optimist, and being one of the more early Terra users, I definitely believe that it could happen. And I won't lie, I was kind of salty up until like June and even July, really. Give it some time, but come late August, September, around there, I started seeing the community more active on these spaces, and you know, a little a little light bulb came into my head. I'm like, man, what if there's some sort of like redemption arc incoming? And then post FTX, I'm like, wow, wow, it really took the entire industry to break down Terra, because then now it's proven that FTX and Genesis were largely the attackers on Terra. So it's sort of like it's sort of like throwing pots at a glass house, right? You're essentially shooting yourself in the foot, thinking you're gonna profit, but in the end, the people that attacked Terra were the ones that ultimately lost. And one thing that you can never fade is community and also dev power. The fact that we've had such a resurgence to the point where even the lunatics telegram is going to be reactivated. I believe it did. I believe it did within the last couple of days. um, but with that being said, dude, I want to ask you this question. What sort of application has to be built on Terra for it to stand out among the rest? What do you think that killer DApp is?
Hmm. It's an interesting question because, like, I think right now, the because I mean, you mentioned this. Really, the focus for Terra has shifted, right? It's no longer about having like that one killer DApp or that one stablecoin algorithmic method coupled with Anchor in order to stand out. It right now, even if you look and take a quick look at like the Terra homepage, right? The idea is now that they are building the next generation of like Web3 products and services. So, and after having spoken to quite a few members at TFL, the focus really is on building tooling, right? It's on building these things like Feather and Alliance, and then the other ones that you mentioned, like Warp and Enterprise, to make it as easy as possible to be economically aligned and to come to Terra, right? And for a host of different reasons, that will that will either put Luna in the hands of people, even if they intentionally weren't expecting to get Luna, or they will need to acquire Luna to participate in some of these activities. And so I don't have like the perfect answer for you there. Um, I think like even TFL, like members of TFL, have reminded us, like, this is a rebranding period for them right now. Like, I think there is a lot of excitement, and rightfully so. But what I think is actually going to be the exciting piece for Terra is not necessarily like the native apps, but all the integrations it builds inside of Cosmos and outside of Cosmos, right? Because you have competing narratives right now. You have mesh security concept from Osmosis. You have interchain security from the Cosmos Hub, and then you have this radically new idea that spawned out of a Agora discussion where Do Kwon posted it himself, which was really when he wrote this little blog post, was the birth of the idea for Alliance and Feather. And so it's really going to come down to how attractive is it actually to come build on Terra, right? Are people going to buy into this vision of, okay, Feather allows me to spin up a chain with just a simple script and a command line interface, and then, oh wait, I get a whole host of already fully vetted and dependable validators. Um, and so, like, obviously, I believe in this vision, but really, we're going to have to wait and see all these chains that come. And I think when they do come, I think that's when it's really going to start to get exciting. Um, Now, there already are a lot of chains on Terra protocols on Terra that I think are exciting. Astroport being one of them. I recently hosted a space about kind of their interchain moves coming. Um, well, one of them that they already announced with Injective, if you didn't know. But basically, I guess my point is like the first chain that is 100% going to be on Alliance and Feather is White Whale, which was actually a chain originally on Terra, or a protocol originally on Terra Classic. Um, but hopefully, it's the first of many.
Yeah, I remember them. I didn't really get to use them, no, but I was aware that you were essentially able to buy someone else's liquidations. Like it was sort of like you're hunting for anchor liquidations. And I'm also aware. I'm not sure if Kuji wants to come back to Terra V2. I know they're sort of trying to do their own thing, trying to be like some sort of Ave on Cosmos, but I understand that they're trying to rebrand and all that stuff, but there's something to be said about the potential rebirth of UST. Not necessarily like an algo stablecoin, but maybe something like USTC where it's backed up by fiat or perhaps something like commercial property. And I want to know your thoughts on that. Do you think that would ever sort of come to fruition? Perhaps maybe put up a proposal, maybe present it at like a conference and a private event, something like that. Because that's where a lot of things happen behind the scenes. It's at these conferences and at these private events, and then that puts the idea of submitting a proposal, sort of getting like a community vote on that. But I understand that that would sort of make a divide between the Lung community and the Luna community, which is kind of wild. Like you have these two separate communities, but they're trying to merge or something. But I'm not even sure if that is even possible, to be honest. So I guess that's kind of like a two-part question. I know a lot of people are confused, but first question would be, what are your thoughts of a UST 2.0 revival where it's backed by similar assets like USDC, where it's perhaps like treasury bills or fiat and commercial property, and also debunking the Lunk and Luna merge meme.
Yeah. Okay. So personally, um, at least in terms of like the concept of a stable coin, and just everyone, keep in mind, I'm not speaking for TFL. I'm not really speaking for Orbital Command. I'm speaking in a personal capacity. Like, I think a second attempt by an algorithmic stable coin should happen at some point. Now, I know you weren't exactly saying an algorithmic stable coin in there. Um, it was an ambitious and failed experiment, nonetheless. But what I will tell you in terms of having a backed native stable coin on Terra, there is a team building one right now. It's not TFL, so it's not from Terraform Labs, but it's Capapult, which is going to be the first native decentralized stablecoin on Terra. And it'll be basically something similar to what Kujira is doing with USK, where you can basically it's a collateralized debt position, which is a fancy way of saying you put in collateral and you borrow a stable coin. And so that'll be. I actually don't know the timeline for them, but it should be coming. I would hope sometime this year. So before I go into the next part, does that kind of answer your question, like personally, I mean, I think it'd be cool a second attempt in the algorithmic stablecoin. I just, based off what TFL has told me, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and then the second question would be, it's sort of a meme question, but the Lunk and Luna merge. Not even
sure.
sure if it
It's the
would
real
even be
merge.
possible. So yeah,
What did Phil say? The real merge?
Yeah, the real
yeah.
merge. I think that
Yeah,
would be really bullish though, unironically, if it did happen, just to like consolidate the community in one place. I mean,
yeah.
just to
It's
have everyone working on the same thing, because I think the fractured nature of the community right now doesn't help in the sense. But I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I've only heard Wabi mention it.
sure. And so the term merge is kind of funny, right? Because uh, several members of TFL have also like come out and publicly stated that like an actual merge and what we think about a merge, like the forming of two companies, is not really possible. But what is very possible is an alliance, right? Given the alliance module, and what would be great, and I've said this vocally inside of lunk spaces as well, is like the idea that you kind of form an economic alliance to where you put Luna in the hands of lunk holders and lunk in the hands of Luna holders. And a lot of people would, even if you're on Luna and you're like, oh wait, why would I, want to get lunk farming rewards from staking an LSD? Well, the reason why is it's without getting super technical on it in Alliance, there's kind of like shaved off staking rewards that go to people who stake their LSD on the foreign chain. And let's say, feel you're the only one that does it, right? You may be getting a ton of lunk, which even if you're worried about its volatility, the APR may
Still
be
lucrative.
insane. Yeah, until
Yeah,
people flood the market and bring that APR down, right? Um,
sure.
and so yeah, exactly. So I think that would be kind of my answer. Like, I think the merge would be something along an alliance, and I absolutely think it's possible, and I'm sure many people would welcome it as well.
Steve's and how can we at Because Bitcoin add in as much value as possible towards the Terra community? What can we do right now with our resources to add in value and to bring more awareness? What are some things that someone who is enthusiastic about what Terra has done and what they're currently doing, what are some of the things that they can do in that respect?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the obvious big thing I think is kind of like what you guys are doing now, like bringing in people from the community, um, doing outreach and bringing on, whether it's protocol devs or protocol leads. And I know even Jared from TFL is like super open to like jumping on spaces with just about anyone. I mean, this is someone you're like right inside working for TFL. And so I think that's just a great opportunity because you kind of got to look. The vast majority of people, even if I write newsletters all the time, sometimes it's like an echo chamber inside an ecosystem. You only get so much outreach, and a lot of people still, you know when they think about Luna or UST, they're like, oh, wasn't that failed chain? Aren't they still under investigation? Like, a lot of people don't really know that, like, the vast majority of I think it's like 9 out of 10 arrest warrants have been dropped against like the members of TFL. So like nearly all of them were voluntarily dismissed because they they simply just didn't have any evidence or like really anything they could pursue on them. So a lot of it was like very political. Then you had things with like TFL got itself audited and published a report where someone literally had access to all their wallets, kind of. So I guess my point is like there still is a lot of um FUD that exists out there and a lot of like false narratives that came out of the crash, which was obviously terrible. But I think just doing what you're doing now, right? Like just reaching out, that's the easiest way.
Just to add on to that too, I mean, I think we've seen every cycle. There's obviously a whole new wave of participants that comes through, right? And presumably next cycle there's going to be another wave, and there's going to be a whole bunch of new people that want to figure out DeFi and understand, how it all works, and try out new chains, try out all these different protocols that people are talking about. And the quote unquote Luna crash is probably not going to mean much to them, because I mean, if they just discovered Luna, right, and they see that the chain is prospering and there's devs there, and people are excited within the community, I think that's pretty much going to be irrelevant to them. And people that like might think that's something to worry about right now just probably have a recency bias, you know. And so that's one thing that makes me optimistic for the future.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Teams, and what would be the best way to get into communication with the guys at TFL? Because I'm sure that there are plenty of individuals that, just spam their inbox, whether it's email or Twitter and what have you. Like, how does one communicate with individuals in that upper echelon if you're not like a validator such as yourself or like a YouTube content producer? And that's something that like we're starting to explore here because Bitcoin sort of like, crypto centric um, YouTube uploads or even something like shorts. So, how would you go about it being in like if I'm an outsider, which technically I am because I'm here on Twitter Spaces and it's not really an avenue where, devs or upper management tend to hang around. They do, but it's not as often as community members. Would that be possible, man, to get in contact with Jared? How would you go about that, brother?
Sure. Yeah, 100%. And so I I'll go ahead and extend the open invitation to yourself and anyone else that if you're not able to get a hold of some of these people, you can go through me. And as long as it's, a legitimate ask, like you're trying to get someone on a space, you're trying to do some collab work. I'm willing to bet, even though they have a lot of DMs. Like so Jared, which maybe we can like pin a tweet from him or something. He's definitely a great person to go through. Another person is MC. I think it's MC underscore UST. I'm looking up his profile right now. Yeah, it's MC underscore UST. He does community for TFL. Um, yeah, and so we have, and there's some other contacts I know through Orbital Command. So I would just reach out to these people. You're always welcome to reach out to me, and I'll put in a good word. And the other thing too is like, obviously, just hopping on some of these spaces that happen. Like TFL maybe doesn't host a whole lot of like Terra. Sometimes they do like a Terra space, but I know Bytes Digital Group. That's another one to jot down. They do a lot of stuff where they bring on TFL. That'd be another one. And then Orbital Command Validator, like we obviously do a lot of like different projects inside Terra, and so you can also reach directly out to us at that account, and we can help put you in contact with people. Would it help if I like like put some of these in the comments or something, or how do we want to do that?
Yeah, we can connect. We can connect after the space, or we can put some things on the nest towards the end. We're just a little over
Sure.
halfway from the halfway mark. But man, being a builder, how's sentiment like, man? Like you're starting to have sort of that rebirth of kindred spirits, man. Like I'm seeing a lot of these similarities with the quote unquote lunatics, right? And if there ends up being that same sort of animal spirits, there's something to be said where history might not repeat, but it often rhymes. It's slow at first and then everything at once. So how from a builder's perspective, how has sentiment been in the background, brother?
Sure. I can't. So full all cards on the table. Like I'm not a builder. I do a lot of like writing and work for Orbital Command, but I don't like build in that sense. More of just like dashboards, things like that. But what I can say from the people I've talked to, right? I think it's great. Like one of the builders at TFL that also is on Twitter a lot is like Vlad. He's the one working on Warp, and I believe Enterprise too, but definitely Warp. And it's just exciting, man. Like you start to see some of these protocols, um, and they don't sound like always to the user like that exciting at first. But then when you realize what they're going to do to bring on other protocols from outside of Terra, really, I'm referencing Warp in particular. It's just exciting. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about Warp if we want to, but I guess just the all in all is yeah, it's an exciting time to be building on Terra.
No problem, dude. If you feel enthusiastic about something, go ahead, man. For myself, when it pertains to the broader Cosmos ecosystem, I'm excited for Parallel and what they're trying to do with the metaverse and GameFi and all that stuff, and also Saga XYZ with what they're doing and their chainlets model, and rollups as a service. I'm extremely bullish on that, and also the modular stuff that they have going on with Celestia and. Yeah, man, that seems to be sort of like what's going to onboard the next few million users towards Cosmos, and that's what I like to see. I like to see progression and then, thoughts being put into action. So feel free to talk about whatever you'd like, man. So stage is all yours, brother.
Sure. Yeah. I'm gonna let's see if this will let me. I'm gonna pin this tweet at the top, so it looks like it's up there. This is one of my. It's just a poll, like tweet five in one of my threads. This is not the most recent thread. They come out weekly. Been doing it for like 30 weeks or something, but this is a little sneak peek of Warp. And so, what's really cool about this, not to nerd out too much, right? But if you look on that picture at the right, you can kind of see like what they're building here. They have these like and or operators. And to give you a really big summary, like big picture, what Warp is, it's basically trying to take automation, like having to build infrastructure for protocols, like away from protocols, right? So if you're a protocol, you usually have to pay for infrastructure in order to have bots which can execute a variety of different like transactions on the chain, and that can be expensive and just labor intensive to get that up and running. But what something like Warp does is it's really like just like what Terra is all about. It's decentralization. So they said, hey, why don't we build a protocol where we can let like these transactions that um, either just random people want done for them or protocols want done for them, make like almost like a job list dashboard. So you could go in and say, hey, I want at this price someone to swap my USDC for Luna, right? When it hits this price or this percent change. And so it can be any kind of transaction on the chain, or I want this NFT when it gets listed, things like that. And so you basically set a job with conditions, parameters, and a payout. And the payout is like the incentive for people to go in and execute those jobs. And so it's kind of creating a decentralized economy of work where people can just go. Like you could just be like on a Sunday afternoon, be like, I got nothing to do. Let me go pick up some free money. Let me go execute some of these transactions. But obviously, people are also going to build their own bots to try to like help do this. But um, yeah, if you just take a look at the pictures, it's pretty cool, pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I saw they did an AMA with Terra Spaces, who's here in the crowd. So I'd really like the idea of sort of like a Terra X Cosmos megaspace where we can have Warp Protocol and Enterprise DAO and people that are going to be, building on top of Luna V2, sort of like an all-in-one space, the best of both worlds. And even you guys over at Orbital Command, because I mean, even though you're saying that you don't work on code or anything, you're still building, right? You're still contributing to the community and the overall enthusiasm for people to migrate over to Terra. because within the cosmos, like over the last 2 years, it's not just like, oh, you buy your atom on an exchange and you stake it, right? There's a lot more than that. And I understand that, there's some there's some drama sometimes with some of these proposals. Um, but the fact that, it's now more than just the atom token. You have osmosis, you have Juno, you have Terra with their rebirth. And you have things that are just like, crowdsourcing back into Terra, sort of like, we're bullish on redemptions, we're bullish on community, we're bullish on devs. And ultimately, I think we're going to see some great things from the team within the next 18 months. I want to have, like, I understand it's not that much time, but in Web3 and crypto, whatever you want to call it, 18 months is basically 5 years, when you compare it to something like the equities market, right? So just wanted to mention that. And I see, man, we're running short on time. We barely have 10 minutes left. If anyone wants to come up and talk some shop with us, give your statements, ask some questions, feel free to do so. Click that request button, I'll bring you right up. And if you enjoy conversations like these that are more crypto specific and tailored around things like DeFi, Web3, and maybe some NFT stuff in the future, feel free to follow us here at Because Bitcoin and turn on bell notifications so that you're made aware of when these crypto specific spaces go live. I understand that this is sort of something that's unique where we're hosting spaces on weekends, but Deeb's hit me up. He's like, "Hey man, I'm gonna undergo a surgery. I think you're gonna get your wisdom teeth extracted or something very painful. I wish you the best, brother." So we wanted to host a space today and just talk some shop around everything being built out in the cosmos and everything IBC. I really love the tech stack behind it and what's come to fruition. It's tangible this time. You know what I mean? It wasn't really like the speculation from 2017 where it's like, oh, buy Ethereum, send it to this pool, and we'll send you another token that is pretty much rendered useless and you can't do anything with it. But this time, we actually do have something tangible and it's being built out, right? And for myself, I am a macro bull when it pertains to crypto and Web3, whatever term you want to use. And when we use the term macro, I use a 10 to 15-year perspective. That is macro. Anything below that is micro, and it's very short-sighted. And to me, the industry is sort of like, in the early to mid 90s where tech really started to catch a bid, and not only monetary value but also in social capital, the amount of eyes behind it. And around that time, the older generation, specifically the baby boomers, they kind of looked down on tech. And if any of you guys do research around like social sentiment, like some of these old CNN interviews and newscasters, they all looked at tech like, oh, it's just a fad. The fax machine is going to be the one to prevail, right? And then you had all these sort of cypherpunks, right? And you had Hal Finney sort of give the idea of what would now be NFTs, right? Like digital collectibles, right? And this other individual, I can't remember his name, but he was mentioning eCash, something regarding like the in online digital currency when the internet fully um, gets rolled out into fruition. And you also had Bill Gates go on Dave Letterman and saying that everyone is going to have a device in their pocket. We're going to be able to access the internet. And he was literally laughed out of off the stage. And if you put that into perspective and where we are now, right, we understand that we had things like the BlackBerry in like 2005, 2006 during the Bush era, but it wasn't until 2016, 2017, where at that point everybody had a smartphone. Most people had an internet connection. So we're talking like almost 30 years, right? 25 years or so. That's macro, right? You know, being a young adult in the early to mid 90s, being enthusiastic about tech, being enthusiastic about, you know what, I'm going to set aside a little bit of my paycheck towards QQQ, right? Towards any ETF in the Nasdaq, right? Despite what older generations are saying and how it's speculative and all that stuff, that's how I view crypto right now, or Web3, whatever you want to call it, right? And despite what's going on now and people talking about recession this, recession that, that's all noise to me, man. I'm thinking, where am I going to be positioned the next 10 to 15 years? And if I'm paying attention to what these large companies are doing, like Microsoft, they're investing into the future, like augmented reality. And from the outreach that I've done within the dev community and VC community, a lot of money in the, like that private money in the background that's not really spoken upon here on FinTwit, it's all going towards these technologies. So, of course, some of them will fail, some of them will succeed, but what matters is the narrative, right? And the community often pushes that narrative. And, that's the great thing about these Twitter spaces and connecting with like minded individuals such as yourself, Deebs, and also meeting lifelong friends like Feel Pain and some of the guys here because Bitcoin. Our motto is being enthusiastic about all financial markets, and we all share a passion when it comes to digital assets. Whether you're BTC exclusive, whether you're an ETH maxi or what have you, we all share the same common passion when it pertains to markets in general. And for myself, I'm enthusiastic about all things Web3. I'm a gamer at heart. I love the idea of digital collectibles, whatever they may be, and eventually things like augmented reality. I'm not really a fan of virtual reality. I think AR is going to be the one to kick off. And I love interacting with guys like you, brother. It's been good hosting you on, and I hope you had a good time, dude. I really do. It was an honor, man.
Yeah, honor's all mine. This has been great. Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming up, dude. I was also gonna say about your wisdom teeth. It's not too bad. I got my I got mine out about 5 years ago, and it was like pretty painless for me. If they do it right, you shouldn't have too much to worry. I was like I could totally talk like the next day, and I was pretty much back at it.
That's good to
But
hear. Yeah, yeah. We'll hope for the best, right? Plan for the worst.
for sure.
I just like stocked up with like all this like, the soups and um like ice packs and everything just to make sure, but I
Oh, for
appreciate
sure. Yeah,
it.
man.
All right, so we'll have one more final call out. If anyone here in the audience wants to come on up, give some statements, ask some questions, feel free to do so. Click that request button and we'll bring you right up. And just as a reminder, if you're new to the space, feel free to follow us here on Twitter at Because Bitcoin and turn on bell notifications. We run spaces Monday through Friday typically. We host Market Check with Premise and Snorlax and our CEO Max. And then we have Market Talk with Carter. And those shows predominantly cover things pertaining the U.S. equity market, and Snorlax typically covers things like technical analysis and what he's seeing on the charts and things of that nature. Same with Premise. And then usually at 7 p.m. Eastern time, we have myself with Crypto World Radio, where I enjoy hosting members from all communities in crypto and Web3, whether it's Bitcoin specific individuals, whether it's individuals that are enthusiastic about DeFi. I welcome all crowds, and sometimes they might be a little bit earlier in the day or a bit later, or sometimes on weekends. So when you do follow us, be sure to click on bell notifications. And in the next 5 to 10 minutes after the space is concluded, it will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. And that's same thing as here on our Twitter page, Because Bitcoin. And you'll be able to find it on the Crypto World Radio playlist. And you'll be able to find all of our archives and previous shows on there. So be sure to check that out if you ever want to listen to a replay or if you've been in and out of the space. And with that being said, we'll give it a few moments if people want to come up. All right. With that being said, any last thoughts or statements, gentlemen?
Think we're good. Appreciate you hosting, Wabi. And I'm definitely glad to have met Deeps. Keep doing what you're doing. It's pretty badass. You're a newsletter writer, and you know so much about the ecosystem. And you've definitely gotten me excited about Terra and the future developments going on.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to meet both of you. This has been great. And we can chat more about future stuff, future collabs. 100% willing to do that. And like I said, everyone in this audience is feel free to DM. Right. This is an open ecosystem. This is where collaboration and sharing happens. Like you are only. I always tell people this. Like you are only like 1 or 2 degrees of separation when you meet a lot of people in crypto from like the people that have created blockchains or are creating amazing things built on top of blockchains. So just don't ever be afraid to reach out, put yourself out there, and you'll be surprised how far you can go. And so that's just kind of the last thing I'll leave you all with. And it's been a pleasure to talk with you all today.
Thank you, man. We wish you luck on your procedure. Can't wait to reconnect with you in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully it's on that mega space with Enterprise and Warp and hopefully some TFL guys as well. I know Jared. We don't want to do any overreach. We want to have a mega space, but not mega, right? So we'll work with that step by step. And thank you, man. Have a good rest of your Sunday. And for the individuals here in the audience, on behalf of Because Bitcoin and myself, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday and joining us. We wish you the best with your Sunday today, Sunday night, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. Take care. And I'll see you on the next episode tomorrow at 7 p.m. No, it's not 7 p.m. Tomorrow's episode is going to be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to have Holder of the Fire, Michael, and Damiano as well. I know I got some good feedback from that one. So look forward to that, gentlemen and ladies. So with that being said, take care, everyone, and God bless you.
Take care, bro. God bless.
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm going to get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, and you say, I'm going to trust the statisticians, you would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000. Depending on how you want to measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now, the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.